What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, hosting the Behind the Bench podcast networking channel, giving a shout out to the rest of the crew: Shy, Kelvin, Jermaine, KB Film Room, and Big Dog Talk Sports. That's right. Everyone who's tuning in, thank you for supporting Behind the Bench. Subscribe to the channel. Help make this show the best that it can be. That's right. Now, Michael Jordan, man. You know, quiet as it's kept. As much as they talk about a man, this is a player who retired for good in 2003. This is 2025, and they still talk about him as if he's out there on the court competing to this very day. He retired for the first time initially in 1993. That shocked the world. And then he retired in 1998 when Bulls management decided to go a different direction and the team was broken up. But I picked up on the beginning stages of the agenda around 2014. 2015-ish. And I came across a lot of articles that were published citing misinformation about Jordan's career, statistical averages or whatnot, especially in the postseason. I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. Because I remember when he retired in 1993, his career scoring average was the greatest ever by then already. 33.4 points a game when he retired in 1993, along with 6 rebounds and 6 assists. But the thing that always stood out, man, his scoring average elevated from the regular season to the postseason, and in the postseason to the finals, whenever he and the Bulls advanced to the NBA Finals. And he had to score like that. He had to, along with playing stellar defense on the other end. So, and I recently came across a video clip of a segment of Shannon Sharpe's podcast, Club Shay Shay, where he had a guest on there. I can't remember who it was, but he's a native Chicagoan, right? And he mentioned how he felt that Derrick Rose was a bigger, more prominent figure in Chicago as an athlete than Michael Jordan. And I'm sitting here like, man, and look, I was a huge fan of D Rose, man. They call him D Rose, right? Come out the University of Memphis. When they changed their name from Memphis State Tigers to Memphis Tigers, come out of Memphis, led his team to the national championship game, had the greatest, I would say, the most memorable playoff debut that I've seen in decades. His first playoff experience in 2009 as a rookie. And I always believed that Derrick Rose could lead the Bulls to a championship, or possibly 2 championships. League MVP in 2011. I felt he was the most explosive combo guard in the league. Nobody could stop him when he drove to the rack. And that injury he suffered to his knee during the first round of 2012 playoffs, that was the most devastating injury I've ever seen in my life. To a player, that happened to a player in the postseason. And you can just feel the city of Chicago, man, like the whole NBA community, man, I was real sad when I saw that, man, because I believe he was going to lead the Bulls to the finals that year in 2012. But nonetheless, the reason why this person stated that on Club Shay Shay was because he said Derrick Rose is a native Chicagoan, which he is. No doubt about it. It's been a lot of great basketball players come out of Chicago, man. A ton of them. We know, we know the history. But the thing is, Michael Jordan was and technically still is the most popular athlete on planet Earth. That's the difference. Especially by the time the Bulls won their second championship in 1992, and when he was featured on the original Dream Team, the Team USA, along with Scottie Pippen and Magic Johnson, Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Chris Mullin, Clyde Drexler, Christian Laettner, John Stockton, Karl Malone. You know what I'm saying? Michael Jordan was the most prominent athlete on planet Earth. That's the difference. So what I'm getting at is this agenda to tear down Jordan. It's not about trying to bring him, try to devalue him or to lead people to view him lower in the all-time historical ranking. That's not what this is about. They trying to eliminate him from basketball history because deep down they know he's the standard. So, and we know why they doing it and who they doing it for. I won't even bring up his name. They're attacking every fabric of his career. Now, the talking heads, the Shay Sharps of the world saying, well, if Jordan was so great, why did he have to go to college? Well, Dr. J went to college, University of Massachusetts. Magic Johnson went to college. Larry Bird went to college. Isaiah Thomas went to college. Kareem played all 4 years UCLA. Bill Walton went to college. All of them went to college. Clyde Drexler, Keem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, Penny Hardaway, Chris Webber, David Robinson, Ralph Sampson, Terry Cummings, Mark Aguirre. I mean, we can go on and on. Bill Russell, Will Chamberlain, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor. All of them. When they drafted a player out of high school, that player was drafted to the ABA, not the NBA. And then even that practice ended when the ABA disbanded and the ABA players were brought forth into the NBA in 1976. But from that point on, they weren't drafting no high school players. Outside, Moses Malone and Daryl Dawkins, that was in the early 70s. Early 70s. They ended that practice. And from that point, from the mid 70s up until 1989, the NBA did not draft any prep athletes or high school athletes to the league until Shawn Kemp. And that was in 1989. So if you're going to trash Jordan for going to college, that means you're trashing everybody. You see how silly all this is? But what they won't tell you is, and I'm going to explain what this video is about. What they won't tell you is the reason why they had to rely on such an influx of high school players that started around the mid 90s, like 1994, 1995, with the likes of Kevin Garnett, is because the NCAA implemented this rule called Prop 48, which raised the score requirement for college entry exams, SAT, Scholastic Aptitude Test. And they raised the score tremendously by like 500-600 points. So what they did was that reduced the number of scholarships that a lot of the major Division I programs were able to offer the top high school basketball players in the nation. That's what led to Kevin Garnett into the NBA right out of high school, coming out of Farragut Academy in Chicago. This is what they won't tell you. This is what they won't tell you. Right? And that eventually led to the influx of high school players. So by the end of the late 90s, early 2000s, it got out of hand because so many high school players were entering the pros, and they weren't even close to being ready to play at that level. They had the physical tools. They could jump out the gym. They didn't have the maturity as a basketball player to understand how to play. At the collegiate level, they was missing that. So when they went to the pros, most of the time they was sitting on the bench. Like a Jermaine O'Neal who became an all-star level player, but it took him 5-6 years. And when he became an all-star, this was after he was traded from the Portland Trailblazers to the Indiana Pacers. He sat on the bench for 4 years in Indiana. Whereas if he would have went to college, he had an opportunity to go to college, he could have became, who knows what Jermaine O'Neal could have turned into. But what I'm trying to say is they're trying to attack Jordan from every angle. His rookie season, why he started winning. Why did he win all those championships? The competition was no good. Although what's crazy about it is over half of the players who were selected as the original greatest 50 all time, Jordan competed against. That's what's crazy about this whole situation. And he played in an era where you had all-time elite centers. But this just popped up in my head, and I wanted to share this. When they say Jordan couldn't get out the first round his first 3 years, what they're really pointing to is the degree of difficulty Jordan had to face starting out. As phenomenal and as supremely gifted as he was as a basketball player, you're going up against the 59-23 Milwaukee Bucks, who was in the heart of their prime as the third best team in the Eastern Conference. From 1981 to 1987, they was the third best team in the Eastern Conference. And a lot of times they would face the Philadelphia 76ers in the conference semifinals. Anybody can look this up. You can go to basketballreference.com. That's the number one basketball source that I've seen on the internet, where you can find anything that you want at the snap of a finger as far as real basketball information. Those series between the Bucks and the Sixers that featured Dr. J, Andrew Toney, Mo Cheeks, and on the other end you had Marcus Johnson, who was a terrific player, man. Him and Dr. J had a lot of battles during those years. Sidney Moncrief, Bob Lanier. Those series would go 7 games and it would come down to the last basket, people. It would come down to the last basket. The Sixers played in the famed Spectrum Arena, and then Milwaukee played in the famous the Mecca. It was basketball heaven, man, I'm telling you. So he had to go up against that his rookie year, and then you're going up against prime Boston Celtics with the best player in the world in Larry Bird, who was completing a 3-year run consecutive back-to-back of being selected as the league's MVP. He anchored the best front court arguably in the history of the NBA, Bird, Mikael Parrish. Then you had a hell of a player in Danny Ainge, who was tough as nails, didn't back down to nobody. And then you had all-time great Dennis Johnson, who won a championship with the Seattle Supersonics in 1979. Then you had Bill Walton, who proved to be sixth man of the year that season. And then you had quality reserves such as Jerry Seasteen and Scott Wedman, who once was perfect from the field in the NBA Finals. Game 1 of the 1985 Finals between the Celtics and Lakers, Scott Wedman went 11 for 11. The Memorial Day Massacre, when they beat us, I believe the score was something like 148 to 114. Blew us off the freaking court that game. This is what Jordan had to go up against in 1985, in 1986, and in 1987. But this is the kicker. This is the kicker. One of the main reasons why it was such a challenge for him to break through is because this guy was so great and unconventional it took a while to understand how to build a team around Michael Jordan. Not because Michael Jordan was holding his teammates back, that wasn't it. But historically, the center position was the driving force in terms of building the primary building block of a championship team, right? You go back to the 60s, of course, the Celtics of the 60s. Who was the anchor? Who was the driving force behind the team? It was Bill Russell. He was a center, right? You look at the Los Angeles Lakers. Jerry West was a two guard, all-time great, Mr. Clutch. You had Elgin Baylor, as they say, the original high flyer, right? Dropping 27 a game. But they never could beat Boston in the finals because they couldn't match up at the center position. That's why they brought in Wilt Chamberlain, right? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, won a championship in his second year with Oscar Robertson as the point guard. So as you can see, it's a common theme. New York Knicks built around Willis Reed, who was drafted in like 1966. Then they won a title in 70 and then 73 with Clyde Frazier and Bill Bradley and those legendary players, Dave DeBusschere and all that good stuff, Dick Barnett and all that good stuff. So what I'm saying is, this dude was so phenomenal. It was either a center, traditionally, that had to have a great point guard to provide that 1-2 punch. You know, Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, you know what I'm saying? Like that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Oscar Robertson. You know what I'm saying? Now, Dr. J, if you look at it, Dr. J was the archetype prior to Jordan. And he was getting his team to the finals, although, you know, he's coming out the ABA, and he did win 3 championships in the ABA. Greatest player in the history of the ABA, Dr. J. But he was getting to the finals, but they couldn't match up versus Bill Walton. They couldn't match up versus Kareem. You bring in Moses Malone, boom, 4-4-4. They win the title in 1983, one of the greatest single season teams in the history of the NBA, the 83 Sixers. And this is not a knock on Dr. J. It just shows that the center position was the premier position in basketball. So you got Michael Jordan on hand, and you see, man, this dude is off the charts, right? Okay, so it took about 3 years to understand how to begin to build a team around a two guard, because convention was we never seen a two guard lead a team to a championship. And what they used to, and then when Jordan started winning the scoring titles, becoming the scoring champion, convention was no player can lead the league in scoring and then lead his team to the championship. The last person to do it was Kareem in Milwaukee. Okay. See, this is where you got to start breaking stuff down. And when you uphold the history of the game, you study the history of the game, you can come to a better conclusion on things rather than listening to these toxic talking heads, because they leading people astray. Okay. So Jordan's first 3 years, he was getting his team to the playoffs, but they was going up against championship level squads. So it wasn't that he couldn't get out the first round as much as who he had to play in the first round. Okay, so then they finally start understanding what they need to do. Okay, so, and this is show you how Jordan really is the standard of basketball. Okay, so in that Bulls documentary, The Last Dance, contrary to what they say, well, this was all about Michael Jordan, he featured a lot of his contemporaries in that documentary: Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Danny Ainge, Sidney Moncrief. And he was showing clips with people saying about him during his rookie year: Clyde Frazier, Mark Eaton. You know what I'm saying? Bill Russell said Jordan was one of the few players that he would pay money to go watch out there on the court. That's what Bill Russell said about Michael Jordan at this rookie year. Okay. So they understood that They needed to bring in a player who can be an extension of Jordan. Notice, they didn't say they need to bring in another superstar. They didn't say that. That's not what happened and transpired. They say, we need to bring in a player who can be an extension of Jordan. Voila, they brought in Scottie Pippen, right? Okay, so that was the first step, and you bring in Horace Grant, who was a good player coming out of college. Okay. So Pippen's rookie year and Grant's rookie year, it paid an immediate dividend. Even though Pippen, he averaged, he was a standard rookie. He wasn't a scrub, but he wasn't what they want to paint him out to be from a revisionist point of view. They advance out the first round. They go to the next round, right? They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, who they was building their team up, they was building their squad up too. So much so that Magic Johnson predicted that Cleveland would become the team in the 90s. If anybody think I'm making it up, Google, you can type in in any search engine, say Magic Johnson predicts Cleveland Cavaliers will be team in the 90s, and watch what you pull up. Okay. And Cleveland, see, it was a lot of teams during the late 80s, man, particularly in that Central Division, that was improving at the same time. I mean, fast. Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, Atlanta. That's 4 right there in the same division. Then here come the upstart Indiana Pacers with Reggie Miller, Chuck Person, the Rifleman, Deadlift Shrimp, Vern Fleming, Wayman Tisdale, who was a beast in college coming out of North Carolina, who was part of the '84 Olympic team that played alongside Michael Jordan, the last American Olympic basketball team to win gold medal, featuring players coming right out of college. Okay, so they go to the second round, and then Jordan elevates his game. Well, first of all, during Pippen and Grant's rookie year, Jordan won his first league MVP. That's when he broke the bank. League MVP, won the second consecutive scoring title, Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star Game MVP, led the league in steals, averaging over 3 steals a game. First player to record 2 consecutive seasons of gaining over 200 steals and 100 blocks. So now they're looking at it like, damn, okay, Jordan giving you the supreme effort on offense and defense. So they looked at Scottie and said, man, if we can develop him to become a reflection of Jordan and become the number 2 player, because quite as it kept, the player who they was trying to mold to be the number 2 option was Brad Sellers, who they drafted in '86 out of the University of Ohio State. That's another thing they won't mention either. It wasn't Scottie Pippen. It was Brad Sellers. But when they saw Brad Sellers was having a difficult time adjusting to the NBA, then they looked at Scottie Pippen, and Scottie Pippen, had a little more athletic ability, you know what I'm saying? A little better instinct out there on the court and whatnot. So they started to focus on Pippen, and Jordan started to focus on Pippen. But the key is, because of Jordan's greatness on both sides of the court, then they took the next step and started to focus on becoming a more defensive-oriented team based on the tone that Jordan set on both sides of the court. That rubbed off on Pippen. It's like a domino effect. That rubbed off on Pippen, right? And then Horace Grant slowly became the third option on offense. But he gave you the defense, Jordan, Pippen, and Grant. And then when Grant really started getting to his groove and fill his role, they moved on from Charles Oakley, who was the enforcer of the team. Charles Oakley was one of the best rebounders in the league before they traded him, right? For Bill Cartwright. They brought Bill Cartwright in primarily to defend Patrick Ewing in the playoffs when the Bulls and the Knicks started to square off in the playoffs during the late 80s, early 90s. They faced each other like 5 times in the playoffs. And Bill Cartwright was brought in because he used to play for the Knicks. He played alongside Patrick Ewing. They brought him in to be able to guard Patrick Ewing in the playoffs. So what I'm saying is, if you look at the moves the Bulls made around Michael Jordan, they didn't need a superstar, man. They didn't need a quote unquote like an immediate guy who come up in there, man, who can quote unquote take pressure off Jordan. See when Jordan say Pippen took pressure off me, he's not looking at, he ain't saying, basically what he's saying is, all I need is a viable number 2 option. Not someone like when Jordan have an off night in the playoffs that the number 2 guy can step up and bust 30 on call. No, what he mean is, and the thing about it, Jordan still had to provide the elite level scoring in the postseason for them to advance to the next round. Even in the first round, Jordan had to drop 30-some points. So what I'm trying to say is, people, when you really look at it, when they try to turn him down, if you really apply logic and uphold the history of the game, what you're going to find is the dude is unmatched, man. And I'm a Laker fan to the core. Kobe Bryant is my guy. I'm with the money on the line. I'm rolling with the Lakers every time. But Kobe Bryant said in that documentary, and I knew Michael Jordan was going to feature Kobe Bryant in that documentary. And I thank Jordan for doing that, man. Because Kobe Bryant was that guy. He was that guy. But what Kobe said, you don't have me without Michael Jordan. See, that's a player who honors and respects the history of the game. Kobe Bryant, or his fans such as myself, whether we think he better than Jordan or whatnot, whatever that situation is, Kobe never disrespected the greats of the past. Never. Never. But let me correct that. Never. Because I sound country when I say never. What I'm saying is, people, in order to be truly great, you have to respect those who come before you, man. And I'm trying to say, when you study Michael Jordan's career, the more you study it, the greater understanding you have about the league, the degree. I think what it is, man, you know, when history has been determined and you look back on it 20, 30 years after the fact, you often take it for granted. And you say to yourself, man, this guy really went undefeated in the finals. Then you start trying to pick and pride because there's another guy out there who they want to be undefeated in the finals, who's far from being undefeated in the finals. They want to chop away at the true greatness. And that's what's going on. So what I'm trying to say is, people, if you look at Jordan's career, when they say he didn't get out the first round or he without pip, no chip, what they really pointing to is the degree of his greatness, the degree of difficulty that he had to face just to crack out the first round. Because remember, now, look at the division that the Bulls played in. Okay, you got Boston on top in a prime. Philly was still formidable because you had a young Charles Barkley. As Dr. J got older, Moses Malone started to age. Here comes Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley was robbed of the MVP in 1990. He should have 2 league MVPs. He was robbed. I felt that he should have won an MVP in 1990. But Magic, that was the closest MVP race, I believe, of all time. It was between Barkley, Magic, and Jordan, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. and they gave it to Magic. I felt Barkley should have got that. And I'm a Laker guy. Magic was my guy, greatest point guard of all time. But you had Milwaukee in a prime starting out when he entered the league. Then here comes the Central Division becoming the best division in the league. Beast. Detroit, Bulls, Cleveland, Hawks, Milwaukee, Indiana. That division was so freaking good, man. It was like two teams was gonna score off in each other in the first round. It was gonna be two teams out of that division. Somebody was gonna score off right out the gate. So what I'm saying, man, the degree of difficulty, the fact that he had to go step by step by step, and then, okay, he gets to the second round in '88. You're going up against a squad who had their own nemesis in Boston, who they broke through and beat finally for the first time. And Detroit, I'm telling you, man, Detroit was an offensive-oriented team starting out with Isaiah Thomas, Kelly Tribuca, John Long, Vinnie Johnson. They was getting to the playoffs, man, but they was not going to beat the Boston Celtics of the world offense. So, and then going up against Jordan during the regular season, when both teams were going tit for tat, pretty much throughout the course of the regular season, they reached the conclusion, and as well as the Cleveland Cavaliers, who was becoming a force in their own right, they reached the conclusion that, okay, Jordan is here, man, and we're going to have to become a more defensive-oriented ball club. And that's when they start bringing in the Joe Dumars. That's when they start bringing in the Dennis Rodmans. That's when they start bringing in the John Sallies. That's when they start bringing in the Buddha, Edwards, James Edwards from the Phoenix Suns. And before you know it, it became 10 deep. Do you realize if the Pistons had not adopted that defensive philosophy, they never would have beat the Bulls in the playoffs? They may have got them their first time in '88. They wouldn't have beat them in '89. They wouldn't have beat them in '90. Because, just think about this, people, and I'm going to shut this down. Michael Jordan, and would have been his fifth year, had second year Scottie Pippen, had second year Horace Grant. Scottie Pippen did improve in his second year. He averaged 14 points a game, but it wasn't 20 points a game. See, that's the thing. Jordan upset. And even when they beat Cleveland in '88 in the first round in 5 games, when Pippen had the great game 5, when he scored like 24 points, when he was inserted into the starting lineup, Jordan averaged over 40 for the series and had 2 50-point games in this series versus Cleveland, dog. He averaged like 44 points a game against the team that would eventually feature the best front court in basketball once Boston started to age. Okay. So in '89, the Cleveland Cavaliers, this was the team the Pistons feared. If anybody think I'm making it up, there's a book out there called Pure Pistons, which chronicled the Pistons' first championship season of '89. And Chuck Daly said the team that they was most concerned about, that they really didn't want to face, was the Cleveland Cavaliers because of their front court. And because of the point guard play of Mark Price, who was the all-time leader in free throw shooting until Steph Curry surpassed that mark. Okay. Then you had Ron Harper, right? Then they had Larry Nance Jr., Brad Daugherty, who was a 2010 center. And they brought in Hot Rod Williams, their power forward. They had a freaking squad. Okay. Jordan upsets them in the first round. This is the same team that many people that year predicted it was going to go to the finals. Not the Pistons. It was Cleveland. Jordan eliminates them in the first round as the underdog. And I'm telling you, people, go back and look at that game 5 of that first round versus Cleveland in '89. The whole coaching staff was wearing Jordans, dog. Phil Jackson was wearing Jordans. Doug Collins was wearing Jordans. Tess Winter was wearing Jordans. Johnny Bach was wearing Jordans. Jim Clemens was wearing Jordans. It was real, dog. Then in the second round, they beat the New York Knicks, who won the Atlantic Division. Won like 52 games, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan knocked them out in the second round. Then you go up against the number 1 seed, Detroit Pistons, who was undefeated in the first 2 rounds, had the league's best record, the league's best defense, the league's best backcourt, the league's best trio of guards, and Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Microwave Benny Johnson. And then you make that midseason trade for Mark Aguirre, who was the number 1 pick of his draft in 1981, dropping 25 a game, right? Jordan in game 3 hit that killer bank shot on Robin and Isaiah, put the Bulls up 2-1 in that series with a second-year Scottie Pippen and a second-year Horace Grant and a newly acquired Bill Cartwright, who you traded Charles Oakley for to get, and you had John Paxson. Just before they got B.J. Armstrong in the draft. This is before they drafted Stacey King. This is before they drafted Scott Williams and the Will Purdue's of the world. Jordan was 2 wins away from going to the finals versus the best team in the league, dog. And if they had not come in with the Jordan rules, they would have lost. That's why they came up with the Jordan rules. That's why Isaiah Thomas said after that game 3, when Joe Dumars said Isaiah Thomas said on the steps of Lake Michigan, and they talked on the phone all night how to stop 23 in red. And then Isaiah Thomas called up assistant coach Brendan Malone 2 a.m. in the morning saying, we finally found a way to beat Jordan. That's why I say these talking heads can't tell a real one nothing who grew up and watched this stuff, dog. So what I'm trying to say is, man, once they understood what they had in Jordan, it took them 3 years to understand that, you know what? A shooting guard can lead us to the promised land and be the driving force of a championship. Once they understood that and truly believed it, they was able to start building a team around him that could complete that quest, that championship formula behind the best player in the NBA. And consensus-wise, when you look at his resume, the greatest player that ever put on a pair of sneakers and played in the National Basketball Association. And once Pippen emerged and matured, once Grant emerged and matured, once they broke through and won that first title in 91, you knew in your heart, everybody knew it was over and wasn't nobody gonna beat him. You don't feel that same way about the other guy they trying to push to the top. You don't feel that same way because it's always continued around moves, constant moves, superstars, franchise level players, MVP caliber players, scoring champions, MVPs, all-time leading triple doubles, top 3 in offensive PER and defensive PER, defensive rating. And you still losing. So I want to break that video down. I think it's time, man, that we got to start elevating history, man. And like I say, when Jordan retired in 1993 and doing that press conference, when they asked him, do you think someone come along and be better than you? He said, sure. Michael Jordan, go, y'all, anybody can pull it up. He said, sure. They're going to have to put in the same work ethic. He said, I'm very content with what I've achieved in my career. And he retired in 93 at the age of 30. And he said that. So it's not a thing where, man, where he felt he was the end all be all. That's what I'm saying, people. Like, that's what you call character, man. That's what you call respecting the game. Now, will that happen? Time will tell. But see, what they got to realize, man, when they trash Jordan losing the first round, what they got to realize is they point to the degree of difficulty where steel sharpens steel. So by going through the gauntlet them first 6 years, having to go up against Boston, even though Boston was prime, the 86 Celtics, one of the top 3 greatest teams to ever do it. Berg told you this was God disguised as Michael Jordan. Isaiah telling you, if we don't come up with the Jordan rules, we ain't beating them. Period. And I'm going to end it with this. There's a clip on YouTube right now. Halftime of Game 6 of the 93 finals between Bulls and the Phoenix Suns. The Bulls are 1/2 away from claiming their 3rd straight championship. And they interviewed Isaiah Thomas via a video, and Magic Johnson was calling the game. And they asked Isaiah Thomas about who do you think would win, if y'all was at full strength, the Pistons versus the Bulls at full strength and all that stuff. And Isaiah Thomas said, when you're talking about the Bulls, you're only really talking about one guy, and that's Michael Jordan, dog. See, the history gonna tell you the truth in real time. And once the youth generation gets introduced to the real, they gonna kick these talking heads to the curb, dog. And the talking heads will lose their prominence and step out the way finally, and we can get our NBA back. And like I said, there's tremendous young talent in this league, man. Young players who have worked tremendously hard to get what they got and to succeed, and they're adapting the superstar mentality once again. The Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders of the world, the Anthony Edwards of the world, the Nikola Jokic's of the world. You know what I'm saying? What the Pacers achieved last season, the Pablo Pancheros of the world. These young stars are ready, man. It's time to move forward. But at the same time, if you're going to talk about the past, you got to be real about it, man. If not, the NBA will crumble and be a shell of what it's supposed to be. But in closing, Jordan faced such a high degree of difficulty, man. When he hoisted that trophy for the first time and won in 91, when he overcome with emotion, the basketball world celebrated Michael Jordan because they knew how hard he had to work to get to that point, to get to that moment, man. Because he didn't take no shortcuts. And that's why he's still revered to this day. And when he come back this year, when the season start, I'm telling you, man, a lot of stuff gonna get corrected, man. A lot of stuff because he gonna be speaking the truth. And it's gonna be so definitive, man. You would be crazy to try to come up with an explanation towards what he's saying, dog. You see? But I just want to share this with the people, man. I just felt compelled to do it. But Michael Jordan, in his rookie year, he comes in the NBA, Showtime in the West, Lakers, Celtics, going up against each other. Prime Bird, Prime Magic, here come Barkley. You know what I'm saying? Milwaukee Bucks. It was just a lot of great basketball about to unfold in that decade, man. Where they became the golden era of basketball. You know what I'm saying? And Jordan was at the epicenter of that. And he took a franchise that never won in the heartland of America and led them to 6 championships with no defeats. And if he had not retired to go play another sport, conceivably, they could have racked off 8 straight. Conceivably. Because the reason I can say that, because he came back, he suffered a setback because he was not in full basketball shape. Once he got back in basketball shape, they racked off another 3-peat, dog. That's why I can sit there and conclude that. And he did it so fast. It happened fast once he got going. So I just believe it's time to reestablish history, man. And like I say, you don't have to be the greatest ever to be considered a respected figure in this league. You see, if you put forth your max effort and you going out there compete at the highest level and you upholding the standard, man, you gonna get your props, dog. You gonna get it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. When Curry won that title in 2022 and he was overcome with emotion on the verge of becoming a champion again, man, I got goosebumps looking at that. I got goosebumps, dog. Just thinking about it right now. He was down at the bottom of the standings 2 years prior. Golden State was left for dead, and he stuck through there, man. He repped that franchise, dog. They returned back to the top, and he was just overcome with emotion, man. He was shaking and shit, man. I got goosebumps. A tear almost came on my eye looking at that. I said, wow. What Giannis did in 2021, leading Milwaukee to the title for the first time in 50 years since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, when they was trying to push him out of Milwaukee to form a super team, and he stood 10 toes down and said, no, the city believes in me. They drafted me. The fans believe in me. Let's go win a championship. He set the tone as the leader, as the superstar, and came home with the title. Off a hyperextended knee. Had the greatest closeout game ever. 50 points, 17 rebounds, 5 block shots. No, 15 rebounds. He hit 17 out of 19 free throws. He was hitting jumpers. He became a champion. You know, Jokic, what they did in 2023, going through KD and Booker, going through LBJ and AD to get that championship. That's when it feels good because you know it's real, man. OKC doing what they did last year, proving the doubters wrong as a young team starting out. At the bottom 5 years ago, rose to the top. Hell, what Kawhi Leonard did in 2019, leading Toronto to the first non-American NBA team to win a championship. Hit one of the craziest buzzer beater series clinching shots in the history of the NBA. One of the greatest playoffs I've ever seen in 2019. Everything was on point. What Kobe Bryant did, man, the late great Kobe Bryant did, man, when they rebuilt around him beginning 2004, a 5-year rebuild and led them to back-to-back titles, dog. It gave me goosebumps, dog. Hell, what the Spurs did in 2014. That was all team, dog. To me, that Spurs team in 2014, one of the top 10 greatest championship seasons I've ever seen. What Dirk did in 2011, people, man. Dirk went through the fire, man, going up against the Portland team who only lost like 4 home games all year. Then beat my squad back-to-back champions in the second round. Then the upstart Oklahoma City Thunder in the third round, man, who won, I think Oklahoma City Thunder won something like 57 games a year, 59 games, something like that. And then beating the super team Miami in 6 games. Dirk, man, he was nuts, man. That one-legged fadeaway pull-up jumper, dog, it was cash, dog. And he came away, he running through the tunnel with emotion, crying, man, coming back out the tunnel, raise that trophy. That's what makes the NBA special, man. And the super team eras hijacked all that great energy, them great moments, dog. But it still breaks through at times where the league reminds you this is the greatest basketball level there is, dog. That's why I say the nays and the says, these talking heads need to get the heck out the way. Uphold the history. You can still love what's going on in the present and build for the future, man. But you can't destroy the past. Otherwise, it'll throw everything off whack, man. And I know this is a long video here, but I get so hyped about it. I just believe it is what it is, man. And Jordan came into the league, man, where he had to earn everything. Like he said, I had to start from the bottom. I had no voice. Whoever the leader of the team, I'm going at him. See, he did, man, when you look back at it, man, everything he did in terms of getting from point A to point B, from point B to point C, from point C to point D, it was immaculate. He had to go through the pain of losing tough playoff battles against the Pistons. Steel sharpened steel, dog. So that for him to come, if you think about it, for him to break through like that and dominate the way he did, in the 90s, it showed you the level of competition and the degree of difficulty he had to overcome in the 80s, getting to that point. That when they try to tear down the 80s, say we done with the 90s, they not done with the 90s because they still talk about it. If it was so bad, it wouldn't be no need to talk about it. See, they playing tricks with they playing tricks in their own mind, dog. A Jedi mind trick with the ages. But what's unfortunate is they're using a platform to sway millions to think totally opposite of what the facts are. See, and when you do that, man, you're doing a disservice. You're doing a disservice to the craft. You're doing a disservice to the league. And that's why you got this disconnect. We didn't have this disconnect when we came up. When we was watching the NBA in the 80s and 90s, we still revered those legends of the 60s and 70s, even the 50s when the league started out. But to try to uphold one person, they got to tear down everything that came before because he's not upholding the standard, dog. And they know he's not upholding the standard. I just want to drop that video, that gold nugget right there. Please leave your comments and thoughts. And until next time, as I always love to say right here, people, thank you for tuning in. This is your boy, JB. This is the show, BTB. And the name of the show, Behind the Bench.